another night with a Sunday night story time with Skaaro, and we're going to be continuing our story from last week, which we began. We gave the first two chapters, I should say, last week, and tonight we'll be continuing on with chapter 3 of the ridiculous Ballad of Skaaro the Red, a Neverwinter tale. And for those who didn't tune in last week, the last week's stream is available below, and it's also available on YouTube as well as on Twitch here. And without any further ado, I'm going to get started here while we play our story, where I'm going to do a little bit of running around in Undermountain and up here in Stardock. So sit back, enjoy tonight's story, and on with chapter 3. Now, last week we left off. Skaaro had been picked up by a band of pirates and was thrown in their brig, where he spent a good part of the evening drinking with his captors, and we'll be picking up where we left off from there. The next morning, Skaaro awoke with a terrible headache and an ill feeling in his gut. Likely it was due to all the ale he had drank the night before. It wasn't long after he awoke that Toothless Pete and the other guards approached his cell. "Wakey, wakey," said Toothless Pete. "You have the honor of an audience with our captain." As Skaaro began to stand, splash! One of the other guards doused him with a pail of water. "What's the meaning of this now?" snarled Skaaro. Then they tossed him a towel and some dry clothes. "Can't have you entertainin' the captain in stinkin' rags now," Pete explained. Skaaro dried off and dressed himself in the simple clothing they had provided. When he was ready, they opened the cell and led him out of the brig. The guards led Skaaro up to the deck of the ship and towards a cabin just below the raised quarterdeck. The sun was shining brightly, and a cool breeze filled the sails of the large galleon, propelling it along the waters. The ship's masts creaked and groaned as they calmly walked across the deck. Seemingly unconcerned about his meeting with the captain, Skaaro couldn't help but wonder where they were headed. As they approached the cabin, Toothless Pete warned, "The captain's a serious one, so no nonsense or funny business." He then opened the door and led Skaaro into the stateroom. Inside the cabin was a large cluttered table surrounded by several stools. The walls were bare aside from a few portholes along each side from which the morning sun shone through, illuminating the cabin. Along the table was a large map of the Sword Coast with carefully placed markers at several locations on it. A number of scrolls, candles, and other items littered the table. Included among the clutter, pinning down the edge of the map, was Skaaro's little dagger, which had been confiscated by the captain herself upon his arrival on ship. Standing at the far end of the table was the ship's captain. Standing well over 6 feet tall, the captain towered over the little dwarf. Her icy blue eyes glared down at him with a calm ferocity. Long, wavy golden hair flowed about her cheeks, down to her neck and beyond. She was dressed in a white frilled blouse trimmed with gold, and she had a stern look on her face. "So tell me, dwarf, is there any reason I shouldn't throw you back overboard?" asked the captain. Skaaro's mind went blank, and he just stared at her for a moment, then said, "Well, for one thing, I'm strong as 10 men. I'll be happy to pull my weight around here if you'll give me a chance." The captain sat down in a chair at the far end of the table, and after a short pause, she asked, "Who are you, and exactly how does a dwarf end up in our fishing nets?" Skaaro recounted his tale of being caught as a stowaway aboard a merchant ship and being thrown overboard by his captors. The captain listened to his tale, then asked, "What was the cargo and destination of that merchant ship?" Skaaro thought for a moment and replied, "I don't know what the cargo was, but they were headed south, probably to Port Nyanzaru. I heard there was mercenary work there and great opportunities for adventurers, treasure hunting and exploring." The captain considered his story for a moment before responding, "I'm Captain Windblade, and this ship be the Golden Falcon. We can always use another hand aboard the ship. It won't be easy, but everybody does their part, and when the time comes, everyone shares the rewards." Skaaro breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I can't thank you enough, Captain Windblade, for both saving me from the tides and giving me a chance to work on your fine vessel." Before he could continue, the captain raised her hand, and extending 2 fingers, she said, Just remember, we have only 2 rules here. Obey your captain, and loyalty above all else." With a strong nod, Skaaro replied, "Yes, Captain, I understand." Captain Windblade then told Skaaro, "Report to the ship's quartermaster, Orvalo. He'll assign you duties, bunk, and provisions." "Aye, aye, Captain," Skaaro replied. "But there's one small thing, if you don't mind me asking. But might you be so kind as to return the dagger I dropped when I first came on board?" The captain plucked Skaaro's little dagger from the table and flung it onto the deck at his feet. As he retrieved it and tied it into his beard, she then told him, "You may want to consider paying a visit to the ship's blacksmith, Hammerfist. He'll be able to give you something more suitable for our line of work." Outside the cabin, Toothless Pete had waited for him to return from his meeting with the captain. "Greetings, Skaaro," he said. "Well, you're still alive, so I'm assuming it went well." "She told me to see the ship's quartermasters to be assigned duties," Skaaro replied. "Follow me," said Toothless Pete. "Orvalo, the ship's quartermaster, is right this way." Pete led Skaaro to the upper quarterdeck, where the quartermaster awaited him. Orvalo was a pudgy but short little halfling, nearly as big around at the waist as he was as tall. He wore a red overcoat which hung nearly to the deck, and boots which reached nearly to his waist. He had thick curly grey hair and wore an oversized monocle. As they approached him, Orvalo waddled over to greet them. "This must be our newest swabber," he said with a grin. "This is the ship's quartermaster, Orvalo," Toothless Pete said. "And this here be our newest crewman, Skaaro." "Welcome aboard the Golden Falcon," Orvalo continued. "You'll be responsible for scrubbing the lower decks as well as the galley and mess halls. Cleaning equipment and supplies are in the storage hold below the crew quarters. There's several free bunks down in the crewmen's quarters. Help yourself to one. If you need anything else, Toothless Pete here can point you in the right direction. There's plenty of work to be done, so I suggest you get started." Skaaro nodded. "Thank you, Orvalo," he said. "I'll get started right away." After a brief tour of the upper decks of the ship, Toothless Pete showed Skaaro the way to the crew quarters, and where to find the cleaning supplies. They also visited the blacksmith's workshop. It was a small cabin with a forge, a press, and an anvil. An assortment of tools were hung along the walls. Working in the shop was a massive half-ogre. He was a muscular hulk, wearing only his pants and a blacksmith's apron. His skin was dark grey and his hair black. He had a wide jaw with sharp teeth and dark eyes. As was his namesake, Hammerfist, in fact had a large hammer in the place of his left hand, which he was using at the moment to pound metal on his anvil. "Hey there, Hammerfist," said Pete. "The captain sent someone to see ya." Hammerfist stopped pounding the metal for a moment and looked over with a friendly grin. "Well, hello. Name's Hammerfist. What can I do for ya?"
Greetings.
"The captain told me to see ya about something suitable for our line of work," Skaaro replied. Hammerfist looked at Skaaro for a moment and then said, "I think we might have something that will work for ya. Come with me to the armory and we'll find you something." Hammerfist led them out of the workshop and down the hall to a locked storage compartment. Inside was an array of various different weapons, arranged on racks. Skaaro looked at a few of the swords and maces, and then a huge hammer caught his eye. It was a simple but heavy hammer, the handle nearly as long as Skaaro was tall. It would be a clumsy weapon in most people's hands, but for Skaaro it seemed just right. "I'll take this one," said Skaaro with a grin. "Oh, you'll like the big hammer? Then consider it yours," said Hammerfist. "You'll be needing it soon enough. I've heard we are raiding a village soon." Toothless Pete then said, "Aye, I've heard the same. But if you don't need anything else, I've got my own duties I must return to now." Skaaro took the hammer and then went on with his duties as well, cleaning and scrubbing the cabins. It was simple but tedious work, but Skaaro was content to be scrubbing floors rather than trapped in the aboleth, or floating aimlessly in the sea. Over the next few days, he diligently did his work, met many of his crewmates, and began learning about the ship itself, the names of the places on it, its parts, as well as some good advice about safety and avoiding injuries. A few days later, Toothless Pete woke Skaaro in the morning, so early that the sun had not yet risen. "Time to get up, Skaaro," he said loudly. "We got to go. Get dressed and grab your hammer. Work to be done." At first, Skaaro was somewhat groggy, as he got dressed and followed Toothless Pete to the deck. The cool morning air and slight breeze snapped Skaaro awake and remembered Hammerfist telling him they were doing a raid today. The Golden Falcon was parked in the thick morning fog just beyond eyeshot from the fishing village on the coast. It appeared to be relatively undefended. The crew lowered several smaller little rowboats into the water, then one by one they descended down rope ladders into the little rowboats. Skaaro followed Toothless Pete and a few others down the ladders into the rowboats. As they rowed the little boats through the fog towards the town, Toothless Pete said to Skaaro, "This be your first raid, so you need to be sharp down there. Anything can happen at any moment, but just stick together and watch each other's backs and we'll be just fine." Rather than land the rowboats at the town's docks, they anchored them a short distance at the nearby beach. Then they waded through the shallow waters to the shore. "Our primary target be the town's treasury," Pete whispered to Skaaro. "The other units will cause some chaos and havoc as distraction, while we make for the big building in the middle of the town." Skaaro nodded. "Understood," he said. "Just lead the way and I'll be ready to smash." Once they reached the beach, the pirates formed up into several units of 5 or 6 men. A few of the pirates ignited torches and passed them along to archers who lit arrows and fired them into the town and at the docks. Several of the boats and buildings caught fire, and soon thereafter panic ensued. While most of the units charged into the burning town, hacking and slashing at everything and everyone they saw, Skaaro's unit followed Toothless Pete past the burning chaos and towards the large building with a clock tower in the center of the town. "It's this way! That's the town hall!" Toothless Pete shouted over the cacophony of screaming and crashing. "Hurry, let's move!" The group charged towards the town hall building, but before they could reach it, a team of the town's guardsmen intercepted them. Before they could even unsheath their swords, Toothless Pete hurled a small canister at the feet. As soon as the canister landed, a cloud of thick purple smoke hissed out of it, engulfing the group of guards. As the guards coughed and choked on the gas, Skaaro seized the moment, and carefully avoiding the smoke, he swung his hammer into the group of guards, striking several of them and knocking them prone. As soon as the smoke cleared, Toothless Pete unsheathed a pair of wicked curved blades. They were like crescent moons with a handle in the center. He unleashed a flurry of blows upon the disabled guards, and with fountains of blood he cut and slashed with surgical accuracy. The rest of the unit followed into battle until all the guards lay dead. The inexperienced guards were no match for Skaaro and the band of battle-hardened pirates. The unit continued towards the town hall building, and when they arrived, Skaaro used his hammer to smash open the door with a single swing. The moment the door swung open, several more guards charged through the door at them, but the team of pirate raiders were more than prepared for them. One of the team members, a masked archer named Huaijin, took several arrows at once, then drew his bow and launched the volley of arrows, which rained down upon the charging guards. Dozens of arrows fell upon them, and they collapsed to the ground. As they tried to stand, again and again, more arrows rained down upon them. A few of the guards retreated back into the town hall, but Skaaro and Toothless Pete pursued them. Skaaro swung and smashed them with his hammer, knocking them senseless. He could hear the guards' bones shatter like dry twigs with each strike of his hammer. Toothless Pete continued his relentless fury, slashing and slicing with his crescent blades until none were left standing. The guards barely managed to put up a fight. Most were not even able to swing their swords before being killed by the raiding party. Then, the captain of the guard stepped into the fray. He was a large man, wearing the same simple armor as the others, but with a blue cape and a matching feather upon his helmet, indicating his rank. Wielding a shield decorated with a lion and a long sword, the captain of the guard charged into Skaaro, knocking him off his feet and sent the dwarf sliding across the floor. The guard was struck by several of Huaijin's arrows, but kept coming. Then Toothless Pete leapt up at him, spinning in midair and striking him in the head with a perfect whirlwind kick, knocking his helmet off. In the meantime, Skaaro had climbed back to his feet and regained his senses. He leapt at the dazed guard captain, swinging his hammer with full force at his exposed head. With a loud, squishy, smashing noise, the guard's head completely splattered in a spray of shattered bone and brains. The pirates stood amongst the bodies of the dead guards, covered in head to toe with blood, brains, and other entrails. Casting an annoyed look at Skaaro, Toothless Pete plucked a sharp shard of skull out of his cheek and said, "Would you mind letting me put some distance from your target the next time you decide to shatter its skull? I'll be cleaning bits of brains out of me hair for weeks now." Once the guards were all killed, the only others left alive in the building were 3 noblemen cowering behind an overturned table in the corner. Skaaro walked over and violently flung the table aside, and the noblemen whined in fear. Toothless Pete grabbed the finest dressed nobleman and set a blade against his neck. "Where's the town coffers at?" the nobleman pleaded. "Please, don't kill me. I'll tell you everything." Pete pressed his blade a bit harder, drawing a bit of blood from his neck. "Well then, where ye keepin' the coffers at?" Okay, the nobleman cried. "It's locked in a vault downstairs." Pete pushed the nobleman to the ground. "Good, then you and your friends can lead the way. Get moving." The three noblemen led the way to the vault downstairs. When they arrived, Toothless Pete shoved the nobleman he interrogated towards the vault. "Open it now," he demanded. The nobleman fell to his knees. "Please, I don't have the key," he begged. Toothless Pete kicked him in the face, knocking him over and bloodying the nobleman's mouth. "Do I look stupid to you?" Toothless Pete asked, then pinned the nobleman's arm to the ground with his foot and with lightning speed cut two of the man's fingers off. "I'll ask you again," said Toothless Pete. "Open the vault." The nobleman quickly produced a key he had concealed under his robe and unlocked the vault door. Inside the vault were numerous chests filled with coins, taxes collected from the citizens and hoarded in a vault by the nobleman. "Pick up the boxes and get moving. Grab the most valuable ones and no funny business," Pete ordered the nobleman. The terrified nobleman obeyed, and a few of the others in the unit also picked up some chests of loot. Skaaro was about to pick up a chest when Toothless Pete stopped him. "You, I, and Huaijin need to follow along and be ready to defend the booty, in case anything goes funny." They exited the town hall, leading the nobleman at sword point back to the beach with the money. As they waded back out to the rowboats, the other units of pirates retreated from the burning city, carrying sacks of valuables they looted from the town. Once all the chests were loaded into the rowboats, the nobleman again began to plead. "Please, we did what you asked. Let us go, please." Toothless Pete just shook his head, and before they could begin to beg, Huaijin put several arrows through their necks, and with a splash they fell into the shallow waters. The pirate raiders then rowed back out into the fog to the Golden Falcon with their treasure, as the town and docks burned behind them in the distance. And that's all for Chapter 3 of our tale, The Ridiculous Ballad of Skaaro the Red. I hope everyone enjoyed tonight's story. It looked to have timed out just about perfectly with our quick recon missions up here in Stardock. So, once again, every Sunday night at 9 p.m. EST, I'll be doing my shows, and thanks for watching.